Ever wondered what happens when even the biggest ships face gigantic problems?
So basically you have an issue of weight and displacement, and eventually the ship can't fight it anymore.
We're talking about behemoths of the sea brought to their knees by engineering flaws, freak accidents, and mind-blowing mysteries.
Historians contend that there was one small mistake with the design of the ship.
Fasten your life vests because we're diving into the shocking stories of the largest ships that encountered giant problems. RMS Titanic. The RMS Titanic, an iconic vessel of the early 20th century, met a tragic fate on its maiden voyage in 1912. This British passenger liner, operated by the White Star Line, was at the time the largest ship afloat. It was designed to be the epitome of luxury and technological advancement, boasting amenities that were unprecedented for its era. The Titanic, built in Belfast, Ireland, sailed toward New York City on April 10, 1912, out of Southampton, England. More than 2,200 people, including crew members, affluent aristocrats, and impoverished immigrants hoping to start over in America, were on board the ship. Its lavish accommodations included opulent dining rooms, a swimming pool, and even a gymnasium. On the night of April 14th, disaster struck. Despite receiving ice warnings, the Titanic maintained a high speed through the North Atlantic. At 11:40 p.m., it struck an iceberg, which caused fatal damage to its hull. The ship's design, once thought to make it unsinkable, proved inadequate as water began flooding into its compartments. The ensuing chaos revealed a stark lack of proper safety measures. There were not enough lifeboats for all passengers, and evacuation procedures were poorly executed. Women and children were prioritized, while many men, particularly those from lower classes, were left behind. The ship's band famously continued to play as the vessel sank, becoming a symbol of courage in the face of disaster. At 2:20 a.m. on April 15th, the Titanic fully submerged into the frigid waters. Of the more than 2,200 people on board, only about 700 survived. The tragedy shocked the world and led to major improvements in maritime safety regulations, including requirements for sufficient lifeboats and 24-hour radio watch on passenger ships. The Titanic story has captivated the public imagination for over a century, inspiring countless books, films, and exhibitions. Its wreckage, discovered in 1985, continues to be a subject of fascination and study, serving as a poignant reminder of the disaster and a monument to those who perished. MV Wilhelm Gustloff. The MV Wilhelm Gustloff, a German passenger ship, met a catastrophic end in the Baltic Sea on January 30th, 1945, resulting in one of the deadliest maritime disasters in history. Originally built as a cruise ship for the Nazi organization Kraft durch Freude, it was repurposed during World War II as a hospital ship and later as a refugee transport vessel. As the Soviet Red Army advanced westward in early 1945, Operation Hannibal was launched to evacuate German civilians and military personnel from East Prussia. Wilhelm Gustloff was pressed into service for this desperate mission. On that fateful January day, the ship departed from Gotenhafen severely overloaded with refugees fleeing the Soviet advance. Despite being designed to carry about 1,900 passengers and crew, the Wilhelm Gustloff was packed with an estimated 10,000 people, including civilians, military personnel, and wounded soldiers. The exact number remains uncertain due to the chaotic nature of the evacuation and incomplete passenger lists. The ship set sail in harsh winter conditions, with temperatures well below freezing and the sea filled with ice. Captain Friedrich Petersen faced a difficult decision: navigate through minefields closer to shore or risk submarine attacks in deeper waters. He chose the latter, a decision that would prove fatal. At around 9 p.m., the Soviet submarine S-13, commanded by Captain Alexander Marinesko, spotted the Wilhelm Gustloff. The submarine fired 3 torpedoes, all of which struck the ship. The damage was catastrophic, and the overcrowded vessel began to sink rapidly. The ensuing scene was one of unimaginable horror. Lifeboats were frozen to the deck, and many passengers were trapped below decks. Those who made it outside faced the deadly cold of the Baltic winter. The ship sank in less than an hour, taking thousands to their deaths. SS Andrea Doria. The SS Andrea Doria, an Italian ocean liner, met its tragic end on July 25, 1956, in one of the most famous maritime disasters of the 20th century. Launched in 1951, the Andrea Doria was a symbol of Italy's post-war recovery, known for its luxurious accommodations and modern design. On that fateful night, the Andrea Doria was approaching the coast of Nantucket, Massachusetts, nearing the end of its voyage from Genoa to New York. Despite dense fog, both the Andrea Doria and the approaching MS Stockholm maintained high speeds. At 11:10 p.m., the two ships collided, with Stockholm's reinforced ice-breaking bow tearing into Andrea Doria's starboard side. The impact was catastrophic, causing immediate flooding in several of Andrea Doria's watertight compartments. The ship began to list severely to starboard, rendering half of its lifeboats unusable. Despite the damage, Andrea Doria's crew managed to evacuate most passengers, aided by nearby ships that responded to the distress calls. In a dramatic rescue operation that lasted several hours, 1,660 passengers and crew were saved. Andrea Doria remained afloat for over 11 hours before finally sinking at 10:09 a.m. on July 26th. Tragically, 46 people lost their lives in the collision and its aftermath. The sinking of Andrea Doria became a media sensation, with live television coverage of the rescue efforts. The disaster led to significant changes in maritime safety regulations, including improved radar systems and clearer guidelines for ships operating in fog. USS Arizona. The USS Arizona, a Pennsylvania-class battleship, met a devastating fate on December 7, 1941, during the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor. This event not only marked the entry of the United States into World War II, but also became a poignant symbol of American sacrifice and resilience. Commissioned in 1916, the USS Arizona served in various capacities, including escorting President Woodrow Wilson to the Paris Peace Conference. By 1941, she was moored at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, as part of the Pacific Fleet. On that fateful Sunday morning, Japanese aircraft launched a surprise attack on the naval base. At approximately 8:10 a.m., a 1,760-pound armor-piercing bomb penetrated Arizona's deck, detonating in the forward ammunition magazine. The resulting explosion was catastrophic, splitting the ship's hull and engulfing it in flames. The attack on Arizona lasted mere seconds, but the devastation was immense. Of the 1,512 crew members aboard, 1,177 perished, accounting for nearly half of the total casualties at Pearl Harbor that day. The ship sank quickly, coming to rest on the harbor bottom, with sections of the hull still above water. In the aftermath, it was decided not to salvage Arizona. Instead, it became a permanent memorial to those lost in the attack. Oil still seeps from the wreckage, often referred to as the Tears of the Arizona, a somber reminder of the lives lost and the ship's enduring legacy in American history. S. Sultana. The SS Sultana, a Mississippi River steamboat, became the site of one of America's worst maritime disasters on April 27, 1865. This tragedy, overshadowed by the assassination of President Abraham Lincoln and the end of the Civil War, remains largely unknown despite its staggering death toll. The Sultana was a wooden steamship with 376 passenger capacity that was built in 1863. But with an estimated 2,400 passengers, most of them Union soldiers eager to get home after being recently released from Confederate prison camps, it was dangerously overloaded on its fateful voyage. The ship departed from Vicksburg, Mississippi on April 24, 1865, despite known issues with one of its boilers. As it traveled northward, the overcrowded conditions and the strain on the damaged boiler proved disastrous. In the early hours of April 27th, near Memphis, Tennessee, 3 of the ship's 4 boilers exploded in quick succession. The explosions tore through the wooden vessel, setting it ablaze and sending passengers into the cold, flooded Mississippi. Many died from the initial blast, while others succumbed to burns, drowning, or hypothermia. The exact death toll remains uncertain, with estimates ranging from 1,200 to 1,800 lives lost. Costa Concordia. The Costa Concordia disaster, occurring on January 13, 2012, stands as one of the most infamous maritime accidents of the 21st century. This luxury cruise ship, owned by Costa Crociere, a subsidiary of Carnival Corporation, was sailing off the coast of Tuscany, Italy, when it struck a rock and partially sank, resulting in 32 fatalities. Built in 2005, the Costa Concordia was a massive vessel, measuring 951 feet long and weighing over 114,000 tons. On the night of the disaster, it was carrying 4,229 people, including passengers and crew. The ship's captain, Francesco Schettino, had deviated from the planned route to perform a salute to the island of Giglio, a maneuver that brought the ship dangerously close to the shoreline. At 9:45 p.m., the Costa Concordia struck a submerged rock, which tore a 160-foot gash in its hull. The impact caused an immediate power failure and flooding in the engine rooms. Despite the severity of the damage, Captain Schettino delayed issuing an evacuation order for over an hour, a crucial time that could have been used to safely disembark passengers. As the ship began to list heavily, chaos ensued. Many passengers were left to fend for themselves, with some jumping into the cold Mediterranean waters. The evacuation was disorganized and hampered by the ship's severe tilt, which made launching lifeboats on one side nearly impossible. The Costa Concordia eventually came to rest on its starboard side in shallow waters near Giglio Island. While most passengers and crew were eventually rescued, 32 people lost their lives in the accident. The aftermath of the disaster led to significant legal consequences. Captain Schettino was convicted of manslaughter and sentenced to 16 years in prison. The incident also prompted a review of safety procedures in the cruise industry and led to new regulations to prevent similar accidents. MS Estonia. The sinking of the MS Estonia on September 28, 1994, stands as one of the deadliest maritime disasters in European peacetime history. This passenger and car ferry, operating between Tallinn, Estonia, and Stockholm, Sweden, met a tragic fate in the Baltic Sea, claiming 852 lives and leaving only 137 survivors. Built in 1980, the MS Estonia was a 15,598-ton vessel capable of carrying up to 2,000 passengers. On that fateful night, it departed Tallinn with 989 people on board, facing rough seas with waves up to 6 meters high and winds of 15 to 20 meters per second. At around 1 a.m., passengers reported hearing loud noises from the bow area. Unknown to them, the ship's bow visor had detached, allowing water to flood the car deck. The situation rapidly deteriorated as the vessel took on water and began to list severely to starboard. By 1:50 a.m., the ship had developed a 60-degree list, making evacuation extremely difficult. Many passengers were trapped inside as the ship rolled onto its side. The rapid sinking left little time for an organized rescue operation, and the severe weather conditions hampered efforts to save those who had made it into lifeboats or the frigid waters. The MS Estonia sank stern first at around 1:50 a.m., disappearing from radar screens shortly after. The majority of those who perished were trapped inside the ship or succumbed to hypothermia in the cold Baltic Sea. The disaster led to extensive investigations and changes in maritime safety regulations. The official report concluded that the bow visor's locking mechanism had failed due to a combination of design flaws, heavy weathering, and inadequate maintenance. However, controversy surrounds the sinking, with some theories suggesting alternative causes. MV Dona Paz. The MV Dona Paz disaster, occurring on December 20th, 1987, is considered the deadliest peacetime maritime disaster in history. This Philippine-registered passenger ferry was en route from Leyte to Manila when it collided with the oil tanker MT Vector in the Tablas Strait, resulting in a catastrophic loss of life. The Dona Paz, originally built to carry 1,518 passengers, was severely overcrowded on the night of the accident. While official records listed 1,583 passengers, it's estimated that over 4,000 people were actually on board due to numerous unregistered travelers. At around 10:30 p.m., the Dona Paz collided with the MT Vector, which was carrying 8,800 barrels of gasoline and other petroleum products. The impact ignited the Vector's cargo, engulfing both ships in flames. The fire spread rapidly, trapping many passengers below deck. SS Mont Blanc. The SS Mont Blanc, a French cargo ship, was at the center of the Halifax explosion on December 6, 1917, one of the largest non-nuclear explosions in history. This disaster occurred in the harbor of Halifax, Nova Scotia. During World War I, when the Mont Blanc collided with the Norwegian vessel SS Imo, the Mont Blanc was fully loaded with explosive materials destined for the Allied war effort, carrying 2,367 tons of picric acid, 62 tons of gun cotton, 250 tons of TNT, and 246 tons of benzol. After the collision at 8:45 a.m., a fire broke out on the Mont Blanc, causing the crew to abandon ship. For about 20 minutes, the burning ship drifted toward the Halifax shore, drawing curious onlookers unaware of its deadly cargo. At 9:04 a.m., the Mont Blanc exploded with devastating force, creating a blast wave that flattened buildings within a half-mile radius and a tsunami in the harbor. The explosion killed approximately 2,000 people and injured an estimated 9,000 others. It destroyed much of the Richmond district of Halifax and damaged buildings throughout the city and in neighboring Dartmouth. USS Indianapolis. The USS Indianapolis, a Portland-class heavy cruiser, played a pivotal role in World War II before meeting a tragic fate in July 1945. This vessel, which had served as the flagship of the Fifth Fleet, completed a top-secret mission to deliver components of the atomic bomb Little Boy to Tinian Island on July 26, 1945. After completing this crucial task, the Indianapolis set course for Leyte Gulf in the Philippines. On July 30th, at 12:14 a.m., the ship was struck by 2 torpedoes from the Japanese submarine I-58. The damage was catastrophic, and the Indianapolis sank in just 12 minutes, taking about 300 of its 1,195 crew members down with it. The rapid sinking prevented any distress signals from being sent, and due to a series of communication failures, the ship's absence went unnoticed for days. The surviving crew members were left floating in the Philippine Sea, facing exposure dehydration, and shark attacks. It wasn't until August 2nd, nearly 4 days after the sinking, that the survivors were accidentally spotted by a patrol aircraft. By the time rescue operations concluded on August 8th, only 316 men had survived the ordeal. Many had succumbed to exposure, dehydration, saltwater poisoning, and shark attacks. RMS Lusitania. The RMS Lusitania, a British ocean liner operated by the Cunard Line, met a tragic fate on May 7, 1915, during World War I. This disaster not only resulted in a significant loss of life, but also played a crucial role in shaping public opinion and influencing the course of the war. Launched in 1906, the Lusitania was one of the largest and fastest passenger ships of its time. On its final voyage, it departed from New York on May 1, 1915, bound for Liverpool, carrying 1,959 passengers and crew. Despite warnings of German submarine activity in the waters around Britain, the ship maintained its course. On the afternoon of May 7th, off the coast of Ireland, the German U-boat U-20 fired a single torpedo at Lusitania. The torpedo struck the starboard side, followed by a second, more powerful explosion, the cause of which remains debated to this day. The ship listed heavily to starboard and sank in just 18 minutes. The rapid sinking and the severe list of the ship made launching lifeboats extremely difficult. Of the 48 lifeboats, only 6 were successfully lowered. The disaster claimed 1,198 lives, including 128 American citizens, sending shockwaves across the world. The sinking of the Lusitania had profound political ramifications. Germany had warned that ships entering the war zone around Britain were liable to be sunk, but the attack on a passenger liner carrying civilians was seen as an atrocity. The incident turned public opinion in neutral countries, particularly the United States, against Germany. HMS Hood. HMS Hood, once the pride of the Royal Navy, met a tragic end on May 24, 1941, during one of World War II's most famous naval engagements. Known as the Mighty Hood, this battlecruiser was the largest warship in the world for over 2 decades and a symbol of British naval power. Commissioned in 1920, HMS Hood was 860 feet long and displaced 42,100 tons. Despite its impressive size and firepower, the ship's design, which prioritized speed over armor, would ultimately prove fatal. On May 24, 1941, HMS Hood, along with the battleship HMS Prince of Wales, intercepted the German battleship Bismarck and heavy cruiser Prince Eugen in the Denmark Strait. The Hood was tasked with preventing these powerful German ships from breaking into the Atlantic to attack Allied convoys. At 5:52 a.m., the battle began. The Hood opened fire, but struggled to find its range. Meanwhile, Bismarck's gunners quickly zeroed in on their target. At 6 a.m., just 8 minutes into the engagement, disaster struck. A 15-inch shell from the Bismarck penetrated the Hood's lightly armored deck, likely detonating in one of the aft ammunition magazines. The resulting explosion was catastrophic. Eyewitnesses reported seeing the Hood split in two before rapidly sinking. The ship went down in just 3 minutes, taking 1,415 of its crew with it. Only 3 men survived the sinking, rescued hours later by the destroyer HMS Electra. Exxon Valdez. The Exxon Valdez oil spill, occurring on March 24, 1989, stands as one of the most devastating environmental disasters in maritime history. The incident took place in Prince William Sound, Alaska, when the oil tanker Exxon Valdez struck Bligh Reef, rupturing its hull and spilling approximately 10.8 million gallons of crude oil into the pristine waters. Captained by Joseph Hazelwood, who was later found to have consumed alcohol before the ship's departure, the Exxon Valdez deviated from its normal shipping lanes to avoid ice. This maneuver, combined with alleged fatigue among the crew, led to the disastrous grounding. The oil slick eventually covered 1,300 miles of coastline, causing immense damage to the local ecosystem. Thousands of animals, including sea otters, seals, and seabirds, perished in the immediate aftermath, with long-term effects persisting for decades. The disaster led to significant changes in maritime regulations, including the requirement for double-hulled tankers and improved navigation systems. It also resulted in the Oil Pollution Act of 1990, which strengthened measures for preventing and responding to oil spills. Exxon faced massive fines and a tarnished reputation, spending billions on cleanup efforts and legal battles. The Exxon Valdez incident remains a stark reminder of the potential environmental consequences of oil transportation and the importance of stringent safety measures in the maritime industry. MV La Joola. The MV La Joola disaster, occurring on September 26, 2002, is one of Africa's worst maritime tragedies. This Senegalese government-operated ferry capsized off the coast of Gambia, resulting in an estimated 1,863 deaths, surpassing the Titanic in terms of lives lost. The La Joola, designed to carry a maximum of 580 passengers, was severely overcrowded on its fatal voyage from Ziguinchor to Dakar. Official records listed 1,034 passengers, but the actual number was much higher due to unregistered travelers, including many children. At around 11 p.m., the ship encountered rough weather. Possibly due to poor maintenance and overloading, it capsized in less than 5 minutes. The rapid sinking left little time for evacuation, and many passengers were trapped inside. Rescue efforts were delayed, with the first team arriving 16 hours after the capsizing. Only 64 people survived, including one woman who reportedly clung to a dead body for hours before being rescued. The tragedy exposed severe lapses in safety standards and led to significant changes in Senegal's maritime regulations. It also resulted in political repercussions, with several government officials resigning or being dismissed. MS Herald of Free Enterprise. The MS Herald of Free Enterprise disaster occurred on March 6, 1987, off the coast of Zeebrugge, Belgium. This roll-on, roll-off ferry, operated by Townsend Thorson, capsized moments after leaving port, resulting in the deaths of 193 passengers and crew. The tragedy was caused by a series of human errors and systemic failures. The ferry departed with its bow doors still open, a critical oversight that allowed water to flood the car deck when the ship picked up speed. The assistant bosun, responsible for closing the doors, had fallen asleep in his cabin, and there was no system in place to confirm the doors were shut before departure. Within minutes of leaving port, the Herald of Free Enterprise began to list. Water rapidly entered through the open bow doors, and the ship capsized in shallow water. The speed of the capsizing trapped many passengers and crew inside. MV Sewol. The MV Sewol disaster, occurring on April 16, 2014, off the southwestern coast of South Korea, is one of the country's worst maritime tragedies. This passenger ferry was en route from Incheon to Jeju when it capsized, resulting in the deaths of 304 people, mostly high school students, on a field trip. The 6,825-ton vessel, carrying 476 passengers and crew, began listing severely around 8:48 a.m. The ship's captain, Lee Jun-seok, delayed evacuation orders, initially instructing passengers to stay in their cabins. This decision proved fatal as the ferry continued to tilt, trapping many inside. As the situation worsened, the captain and some crew members abandoned ship, leaving hundreds of passengers behind. The Coast Guard's rescue efforts were criticized for being slow and poorly coordinated. Many survivors were saved by civilian fishing boats that rushed to the scene. The tragedy sparked national outrage in South Korea, exposing deep-rooted issues in the country's safety regulations and emergency response systems. Investigations revealed that the Sewol had been overloaded and improperly secured cargo had shifted, contributing to the capsizing. Deepwater Horizon. The Deepwater Horizon disaster of 2010 remains one of the most catastrophic environmental events in recent history. This offshore oil rig, operated by BP in the Gulf of Mexico, suffered a devastating blowout on April 20th, triggering explosions that claimed 11 lives and led to the sinking of the rig. The incident resulted in an uncontrolled release of crude oil into the Gulf, which continued for 87 days until the well was successfully capped. The environmental impact was immense, with an estimated 4.9 million barrels of oil spilled, affecting marine life, coastal ecosystems, and the livelihoods of communities dependent on fishing and tourism. Efforts to contain and clean up the oil spill involved an unprecedented response, with thousands of personnel, vessels, and equipment mobilized. The Deepwater Horizon disaster prompted widespread scrutiny of offshore drilling practices, regulatory oversight, and corporate responsibility. It also led to significant legal repercussions for BP and its partners, resulting in billions of dollars in fines and settlements. This tragic event underscored the environmental risks associated with deep water drilling and spurred advancements in safety regulations and spill response capabilities across the oil and gas industry globally. USS Thresher. The USS Thresher was a nuclear-powered submarine that tragically sank during a deep diving test off the coast of New England on April 10, 1963. The loss of Thresher and all 129 crew members on board marked a significant disaster for the United States Navy and the submarine community. The submarine was conducting deep diving trials when it encountered critical mechanical failures, believed to be related to piping in the engine room. The exact cause remains uncertain, but the submarine rapidly descended below crush depth, where the immense pressure led to its implosion. The sinking of the USS Thresher prompted an extensive investigation and reevaluation of submarine safety protocols. It spurred advancements in submarine design, including improved hull integrity and emergency systems. The disaster also led to enhanced training for submarine crews and stricter safety procedures during submarine operations. SS America. The SS America, originally launched in 1939 as a luxury ocean liner, met a tragic fate in 1994. After a storied history that included service as a troop transport during World War II and later as a passenger ship, the vessel was eventually abandoned and left adrift off the coast of the Canary Islands. Despite efforts to save and restore the ship, the SS America succumbed to harsh weather conditions and began to deteriorate rapidly. The once grand liner, known for its elegant Art Deco interiors and transatlantic crossings, became a symbol of maritime neglect and environmental concern as it gradually sank into the Atlantic Ocean. The final chapter of the SS America's saga was marked by unsuccessful salvage attempts and a heartbreaking decline. Its remains now lie submerged off the coast of Fuerteventura, where they have become an artificial reef and a haunting reminder of the ship's former glory. Seawise Giant. The Seawise Giant, originally named the Jari Viking, was the largest ship ever built by gross tonnage. Constructed in Japan in 1979, it was initially used as a supertanker for transporting crude oil. At its completion, it stretched over 1,500 feet in length and could carry up to 564,763 metric tons of oil. In 1988, during the Iran-Iraq War, the Jara Viking was severely damaged by Iraqi aircraft while anchored off the coast of Iran. The damage was extensive, leading many to believe the ship was beyond repair. However, the the ship was salvaged and underwent a massive reconstruction effort in Singapore, where it was renamed Seawise Giant. After its reconstruction, Seawise Giant resumed service as a tanker under several different owners. It was eventually retired in 2009 and dismantled in 2010, marking the end of its illustrious career as the largest ship in the world by gross tonnage. Seawise Giant's story remains a testament to the engineering feats and challenges of managing such massive vessels, as well as a reminder of the economic and geopolitical influences that shape the shipping industry. We are coming to an end here today. Thanks for watching, and for such top listing videos, subscribe to our channel.